All right, looks like we've got a bunch of participants here and we'll get started. So welcome everyone to the webinar today. Quick announcement, this is going to be recorded. This will be sent out to you all. If you have questions, there is a Q&A actual setting there. There's a chat box, but then there's also Q&A. If you can use the Q&A, that helps us organize those questions and answer those directly. But yeah, we'll be walking through here today how to use Fusion to build apps faster with AI, and especially in the critical part here is using your actual design stack, your design system, and your repos and all that good stuff. Just to introduce myself, I'm Nick Nessel. I'm a solutions engineer here at Builder. I'm in San Diego right now, and basically, solutions engineer means that I'm in our pre-sales group, and I kind of spend my day talking to customers, helping them through kind of proving out the solution. So, yes, I do a lot of these demos, but mostly what I'm talking about is really chatting with folks around not just like how cool the AI is, but how do we practically actually adopt this AI, put it into our systems in a way that makes sense, right? Not just like this is a cool thing, but it fits into our processes, it fits into our actual systems as well. And so, kind of whenever I'm doing these, I kind of always like to have a kind of a bent on that, right? Like the practical aspect of how do we adopt it. And so, what we're going to go through today is really kind of how we're differentiated, connecting your design system and app to a repo. And then using AI not just to connect to the repo, but to connect to your actual design system to build out um, things that don't just look good, but actually fit into your process and are kind of ready for production ready code as well. We're going to get into a demo. We're going to spend most of the time in the demo, but I do have just a couple slides just to introduce Fusion and kind of set the landscape for us here. And I like to show this slide because there's a lot of AI tools out there, and I would bet a lot of people on the call have tried at least one of the ones on this screen. And just to give you a sense of where Fusion fits in, Fusion is our product, Builder is the company, Fusion is the product we'll be talking about today. And I apologize up front. I kind of say Builder and Fusion interchangeably. So I just be prepared to hear both of those names. Um, but if we look in the top left corner of this are really what we call like the AI IDEs, things like Copilot or Cursor or Windsurf. These are really excellent AI tools for engineers and our engineer team to use them as well. The issue with those is that when we're talking about design is they're really very focused on engineering. They're not really super accessible to people that aren't able to like write code and set up a whole environment. If we look at the bottom right here, this is what we would call like our vibe prototyping tools, things like Lovable and Figma Make and Bold, which I would bet many of you have tried as well. And those are really excellent for designers building prototypes and wireframes. But from the folks that I talk to, where it kind of falls down is it's not really production ready code. It's more of like a wireframe. But then when you go to actually implement this, your engineers look at the code and it's not really what they're looking for. And so with Fusion, we're trying to hit that middle ground of enterprise ready using your code, but also that ease of use and accessibility to everyone like designers and product managers. And that's really kind of what we're aiming at here with Fusion today. And to dig in a little bit more, like if just to kind of help set those expectations, like this is typically what we see from the process, the design and engineering process today. It's kind of that nice waterfall that we're all used to. And critically, like each one of these bars here is really like switching to a different tool, whether it's in Figma or Code or going back to Figma or Jira or those types of things as well. And when we look at the vibe prototyping tools, what they're really good at is helping speed up this front part of this process, right? Maybe you write less docs, spend less time in Figma. But what I'll point out is when it actually gets to converting to code, as I mentioned before, it's not a huge time savings on the code front because those tools aren't really using your code base in your design system. They're just kind of approximating the look and feel, but under the hood, they're kind of totally different, right? If we look at the AI IDEs, the cursors, and those types of things, those are really, really excellent tools for engineers, and they're improving this coding part of the process quite a bit, right? But what you'll notice is like it's still this old kind of workflow that we're looking at here of like switching back and forth. It's still like the old way of thinking about how should we do development. It's like a point solution here. What we're thinking about with Fusion is what if we built a solution from the ground up with AI in mind? How would this like actually change fundamentally how we all work together in that workflow? And what we're aiming for is something like this. If everybody's working where the basis under the hood is code, we get away from that waterfall and more to this more collaborative kind of working process. And what that gets us with Fusion is really what we find is there's kind of three big use cases that we cover here. The top one around ideation and prototyping. And what I mean by that is this is usually a little bit more greenfield of like, I have an idea. I want to get 5 ideas out there quickly, get some prototypes in the hands of people. How can we use Fusion to build prototypes, refine, and even then get those prototypes deployed, right? This middle workflow that we'll walk through here, this the design to code, I think this is kind of what people really go to immediately when they think of AI to code is I have a Figma design, I need to convert it to code. And what we're looking for here is like, can we shift a lot of that prototyping work onto the designer, enable the designer to do that work rather than that back and forth with designer dev, right? It's really more, let's enable the designer to take it a lot further with interactivity, with responsiveness, with accessibility, all those things that are hard to express in Figma, and have that code be ready for review and be able to allow an engineer to kind of quickly approve it. And then finally, with the last workflow we'll go through here today for a use case is what I call like the backlog or enhancement use case. You can kind of think like there's always a million things we'd like to get to if we had more time. There's always this big backlog of smaller items that aren't critical, but the problem today is that you have to put everything kind of through the same process of get a designer to design it, get a coder to build it, iterate back and forth. And so it's never worth it to prioritize these smaller things, even though they would be just like quality of life improvements for your applications. And so that's kind of the other workflow. What if we can get through those faster? If we could build high quality there, but do it quicker, we'd be able to kind of crank through our backlog and just generally raise the quality of the applications that we're providing as well. So we're going to walk through those three use cases in the way that we're going to enable this. And this is our last slide, and then we'll get into the demo. Is kind of fundamentally how Builder is different here is that the starting point for us is really doing a couple things. We're going to connect into your actual code base. We're going to index your actual components here. We're going to get context from any other reference code bases you have. And we're going to provide the way for you to kind of also just talk to the AI as well and give some custom instructions, right? What that enables us to do is when you're working with Fusion is we're not starting from scratch and just saying, give me ideas. What we're doing is we're basically treating Fusion as like another engineer on your team, and we're onboarding that engineer with, this is where our code base is. This is how we write code. These are the components that we use. And what that allows us to do is really build high quality production ready code, which is what we're going to walk through today. So that's kind of just the intro. I think the next slide should say, let's get into the demo. Let's see. And if it doesn't matter because that's what we're doing. All right, cool. Let's jump into the demo and let's do a few of these use cases. And now again, like as we jump in, like we're going to build some cool stuff here. But I think like what I really want to drive home is what I was just talking about. We are going to connect into your projects in your design systems. And I want to take a second here to talk about the setup and how we build these environments out. And then we're going to do a side-by-side comparison of that. So when you log into Fusion, this will be your home page. And what I want to first point out is I've got 3 projects that are already set up here. We're a large enterprise, right? We're working on 3 different things. I have dashboards that I'm building. Those dashboards are using the Cloudscape design system. So there's one design system here. We have a CRM project that we're working on. It might be a separate set of people that are doing that. And it actually uses a different design system, which is Material UI. And then at Builder, we've also built our own internal application called the Academy project, which is where we train people how to use Builder. And so we already have 3 different projects. They each have a different look and feel, right? So when we're building things, we're not going to want everything to look the same. If I'm building dashboards, I'm going to want them to look like dashboards. If I'm building my CRM, I'm going to want it to look like the CRM. So how do we enable this? Well, if we go into the settings, what we're going to do is you can see we've actually connected into our live repository. So number one is we're connected to the code base. When we do these prototypes, we're going to build in a branch within the actual code base itself. And there's some instructions on how we run that code base. But the other really critical piece here is our design systems. And this design system knowledge, I think, is what really sets Fusion apart from kind of all the other tools out there. You can see what I've done is I've told Fusion For this project, the design system that we're using is this one called Cloudscape 3.0. If I look at, we do have other design systems in our company. We have this Material UI one, and so other projects might use Material UI. And so anytime you're going to do any development work or any prototyping work, we're able to give this context of, I'm not just building something from scratch. I'm doing it in this project and I'm doing it with this design system. Now, when we look at these design systems, you can index as many different versions or as many different types of design systems as you have. What we find for enterprises, especially, is there's usually a few different flavors. And when we dig in, this is really kind of where Fusion here has built its own documentation that's going to use as we do this prototyping of here's all the components that we have, here's how they're used, this is how they're typically used together. And so we're not just going to build something fresh, we're going to do it with your components in the exact way that you normally do use the components. And I see I have a little red dot there. I think that's a drawing. How do I get rid of that? All right, cool. That was my Zoom drawings. So let's recap, right? So we're here at this starting point. We're going to go through now and start using these. But what we've done is we've done some setup here. We've said, this is my project. This is my design system. And when we get into the projects, we'll actually look at some of the custom instructions as well. Now, if we go back, the first use case that we were talking about is I'm going to take us through this ideation and prototyping use case. So what this use case is we've got an existing project, and I can pull it up here for us. And this is our existing project. It's our CRM project. We could see like we do already have some things built within here. This is using the Material UI design system. But if we look at our customers page, there's nothing here, right? We need to design a page, and our job here is now like, give me some ideas. This is kind of greenfield here from scratch of like, what could this look like if we build these things? And so I'm going to ask Fusion for some help. I've written out this prompt already just so you don't have to watch me struggle with all these typos. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Fusion for some ideas here. I want to prototype a customer management interface. I want it to have these three abilities: search customers. I want it to use my actual API. This is another key thing, right? We want it to show our data. We're connected into our repos so we can use our data to show these prototypes. And I want to be able to create new customers. And because we're kind of in this green field, uh, I want three different ideas. And I'm just saying use a grid of cards. And then I'm going to say I have an image to attach, and I also have a Figma to attach as well. So again, this is really just like getting ideas, getting those prototypes out there so we could start getting feedback. I'm going to paste that prompt in here. I went on the internet and I found a picture of HubSpot, and I want to use HubSpot as inspiration for a CRM dashboard, since that's kind of what HubSpot does. So I grabbed this image. It's super blurry, as you can see. And it looks like HubSpot, right? It doesn't look like our actual thing, but that's okay. And then I also in Figma just built a really quick wireframe. And why I did this here, and like you can see, it's awful. My Figma prowess is not very strong. But what we have here is I don't want to build a whole detailed Figma design at this moment. What I want to do is just express an idea of like, hey, I want it to have the profile at the top and I want it to have a table at the bottom. And when I click this table, I want it to show that person up there. And so using our Figma plugin here, I've selected this whole design. I've hit the Smart Export button. It's using the Figma API to copy all of the information and design tokens and properties from this design. And I'm just going to paste that into Fusion as well. And so why I'm doing this is, and I'm going to hit enter and let this get going. I want to really drive home the point, right? This is that inspiration phase. There's HubSpot does it one way. I've got an idea here. I've also just said like, build me some cards. And the big difference here is I don't want it to build something super generic. All of these things need to look like my existing application, and they need to use my existing Material UI design system. And that's going to be kind of the big difference of the output of what we see here. This runs pretty quick, but it's more like minutes. It's not seconds. AI isn't down to seconds yet. And so while that's running, what I want to do is kind of show you what would be the output that we would get if we didn't connect our design system, right? And that's what a lot of the other vibe prototyping tools that are out there will do. What you would do in that case, right, is we would probably take a similar prompt like this, and In Fusion, we do have that ability. If you do just want a greenfield prototype, you can put it in this box at the top and select the kind of template that you'd like to use. Um, we could still go through, we could grab and paste these guys in. Let me do that super quick. Let me paste our image in. And so it's the same prompt that I'm giving to Fusion here, but in this example with this box at the top, this is just a totally fresh like Hello World instance. There's no design system attached. There's no repository attached. We can do that, and if I hit this button, I've already kind of done this ahead of time just in the sense of time. So if I hit this button, what we would produce in Builder is something like this, right? So it did create this customer management dashboard, and I'll prove it to you. It really is the same prompt that I put in here. Um, but what do you notice here, right? This is a great look and feel. It does the things I want. It uses cards. It's pretty good, right? I can click new customer and it can create new things. But what we notice especially, and as we look through the different versions, here's the HubSpot version that we asked it to create. Looks pretty good. It's got that orange there because our HubSpot screenshot had orange. Um, so it's functional. It looks great. It's expressing this idea. This doesn't look anything like my actual project though, right? When I look at my actual CRM project, it has this kind of gray theme. It has these buttons. If I look at the dashboard here, things are supposed to look like this. Our buttons look like this. When we look at what a generic vibe prototyping tool might output, it's functional, it looks good, but it's not our stuff, right? And so this is really the kind of the key differentiator and the key thing here where when we build with your design system, if you want to go beyond just expressing kind of the concept of an idea, and we want to get down to what will this really truly look like in my environment. And now this is finished, and so we can see the examples here of how we built in our environment. When we now look at that same V1 that was built within our environment using our actual design system, now you can see this is a cohesive thing. This has the same look and feel as the rest of my application. The buttons are the same. It's also adhering to my theming. So our project, we do a very specific way we do our light and dark theming. And so if I switch over to dark mode, that's going to all be adhered to as well. It's just ready to go, right? And this is what it looks like. If we look at the V2, this was that HubSpot example. If you remember, if we go back to that HubSpot, there's a bunch of orange and blue here, which is what HubSpot does. But what Fusion did for us instead was we don't see that orange and blue. That's not our color scheme here and what we're doing in our CRM. In our CRM, what we're doing is those grays and our buttons look like this. But what it did do is in HubSpot does have this concept of functionality of saving views. So it read that screenshot, it saw that saving views is kind of the inspiration. So it built that saving view functionality in, but it built it in the way that we would do it. And now you can see I could add a user here. The buttons looks like we need to tell it to fix that, which we'll do in a second as well. Um, but the third one that I want to show, this V3, right? This is the example, and just to remind you here of what we built. In Figma, I built this wireframe, right? And it was really just to express an idea. Sometimes when I do this demo, I actually like sketch something out on a napkin or a piece of paper and just take a picture of it and upload it. But it's really just expressing this idea. And when we look at the result here, it did a pretty good job. So when I click on something here, it actually does show that profile up at the top, but critically, it doesn't look like just like, a really basic wireframe. It looks like my design system. If I go back to where we had asked it to do it without our design system, I wonder what my wireframe looks like here. It probably looks a lot. Yeah. So without the design system connected, we're going to get a basic wireframe because we put in a basic wireframe. But when we do connect our design system, it takes the concept of that wireframe and builds usable, kind of functional in the way that we expect it to see. What's also nice, and the other big difference here, you can see these users with images that are showing here. That's because if you remember, we did actually connect into our users API. So when we're looking at these, we're seeing actual, like the data that we're expecting to see, right? Our actual user data here, which is very helpful. And why that becomes really helpful is there's two big things that happen here. What you're going to want to do right now is send this out to people and get feedback for it. And so as I click the share button here, We have a preview URL that we could send out to folks, and this is going to now be accessible for anyone to look at and give feedback. This will take a second. We can put a password on these previews if you'd like as well, which is a question that always comes up. And so here we are. We could see our actual thing. I'm going to switch over to light mode. So now we could send this out to anyone from the team, and they can review it and give feedback. And why it's really useful, what we found talking to customers is there's kind of like two big pieces of feedback that always come back during this prototyping phase. The first piece of feedback that people usually say is like, that's not our data. This doesn't make sense, right? And like a product manager, a designer is like, yeah, I know it's not our data. It's just kind of an example to express an idea. And then the second most common piece of feedback that people give in this scenario is like, that doesn't look anything like our application, or that color of that button is wrong, right? And like I talk to a lot of PMs and designers, and it's one of this big frustrations is like, if you don't get it perfect, the type of feedback that comes back, even though you're just trying to say, it's just an idea, just comment on the concept. It's hard for people that aren't and deeply initiated in this process to really think about anything other than like that color is wrong. So we solve that problem. It gets past all that. It has the look and feel of what it's going to be. And then also the bonus that when we do actually put this to production, this is actually the thing it's going to look like. It's not going to look totally different when we do go ahead and build it. Um, one last piece that I want to show is like what we've done so far here is we've taken an idea, we've gotten some good prototypes here. It's very functional, but obviously we want to tweak from here. And what I'm going to do now, which is another large differentiator for us, is up here, I'm going to switch over to design mode. And what design mode is hopefully you should look at this and say, like, that looks an awful lot like Figma, and that's intentional. So we could chat with the AI here and ask it to do things, but what we've also found is designers and PMs and engineers, a lot of times they're like, I know what I want, I know exactly the pixels that I want, let me just do it myself. And we're able to do that here. So now I'm in design mode and point and click. And maybe as I look at these, I'd like there to be a little bit more spacing between these items. And so I can actually say, let's put a large spacing between those items. And then perhaps, as I look at this, I'd like for the filters to be up above that. And then I'm going to do some terrible design that I don't recommend. But perhaps, let's see, where's my background? Uh, Yeah, let's put a background on this. Ooh, not an image. Let's do a background color. Let's make it like a dark green background, which again, I don't recommend, but as you can see, like we're able to do these really pixel perfect adjustments as well. What we hear a lot too is like we want borders to be exactly, a 5 pixel border, right? And so why this is really useful is these are things that are like notoriously really, really difficult to like just ask an AI to do. You could try to describe it. No, put this border, put that. This is also usually the thing that with a designer and an engineer, you spend the most time getting this pixel perfection. And it's really unsatisfying process for both the engineer and the designer because it's like this back and forth, back and forth. In this scenario, a designer can ask this, can self-help, can get these things looking exactly the pixels how they want, and then hand it off to the engineer. So what we find is people are even doing this in kind of live feedback sessions with stakeholders as well. Stakeholder looks at this, they say, let's move this thing here, let's change this background to green. Real time, you could see those views. Um, so that's kind of our first scenario. What I'm going to take us through next, right? And this is the again, like if we remember, this is the ideation and prototyping. This is exploring the space of like what could it be, but critically, it's in our design system. Now, the second use case that we want to walk through is like that's really great, but I'm a designer. We use Figma every day. I know what I want. I have a very specific idea of how this thing should be built. And so really what I have here is I have a Figma design and I need to get this thing just built into the code as quick as possible. And that's kind of the second use case that we want to walk through here. And so for that use case, just to remind you all, let's see, we've got a few different projects here. And so what I'm going to do for this second project is we're going to use our Cloudscape, right? We have a different project that's all about dashboards. And because dashboards are different than our CRM, we have a different design system that we use for that. We have a separate project where we're going to build into there because dashboards just need inherently a different look and feel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click a new branch here to create this new branch. And so everything that I'm working on now is going to be my own little personal sandbox. It's not directly editing like the production code. It's just a sandbox here that I'm going to edit. And I've already done that just to save us time. So we'll open that and here's this new branch. It's very nice. It's asking me how am I today. So what do we want to look through here? We want to take this design and I want to look at a couple things in this Figma design to point out for you. Um, the first thing I'll point out is we're being a good designer and we are using a lot of our design system components. So as we look at this area chart, you can see it's actually a component from our design system. The bar chart is, if I double click this button, I think like 35 times, I eventually do get down to where the button is here too, right? So those buttons are there. But I want to zoom in on this alert banner because when we look at this alert banner, what we can see here is I'm actually not using a component from my design system here. This is something that this designer has just built basically from scratch within this system. And maybe it's because there isn't a component that matches up to it in the design system. It could also be that this designer just isn't aware that there is a component that should be used, right? Or maybe the Figma design system doesn't have it in there, right? It could be a number of reasons why that wouldn't be there. But it's pretty typical that when we're doing designs, within Figma, that we've got a mix of using our design system and just brand new things that have been built in. And we're going to support both of those. And so again, what I'm doing is I'm selecting this whole design and I'm using our Figma plugin to just run that smart export. And what that export is, you can see it's processing all 755 nodes within here. It's grabbing all the design tokens, all the borders, all the properties that are in here. And I'm going to copy that over. Now, when I go into my Cloudscape design, I'm just going to paste that Figma design into the chat and say, build this network dashboard. And maybe add a link in the dashboards tab, right? We're building it into our existing project, so we want to add it to a specific spot. And so we're going to let that run. Now, again, what I'll point out here, what I didn't do is I didn't say, make sure to use Cloudscape components. For my area chart, make sure it's exactly this. And for this, make sure you're using this design token. As a designer or a PM or someone that's just not initiated into the whole design system, I don't have to speak that way. I don't have to know all of those details. And the reason why is because we've already primed the pump here in Fusion to have all of those details. It already knows those things, right? It already knows our design system, and you could actually see here in its thought process. If I can catch it, um, where was it saying? Sorry, it's scrolling as I go, so sometimes it's hard to catch it. Yeah, so you can see it's thinking the design uses the Cloudscape design system. I think it's going to be hard, but we'll see. Yeah, it uses the design system. It's saying we're going to use these components. And as you look through the thinking of it, you could actually see it's recognizing things like, oh, this is the area chart. This is the refresh button. And it's going to take the time to like actually look through the design system and find the things to do. This is exactly the thought process that your engineers go through when they're trying to convert these designs manually. Um, Again, we're going to let this run for a second. It shouldn't take too long. But again, for comparison, what I want to do is what would this look like if we didn't have a design system attached? If we were just using kind of a standard off-the-shelf Vibe prototyping platform, I could copy this over. I could bring it in and just ask it to build it here in this box like I did before. And I've already done that. And so I'm just going to, the cooking show, this thing's already done out of the oven. What we're seeing here in this example is what would this look like if we didn't have design system context? And what would this look like if we just built something from scratch? And I think this is like a really, really good example because it doesn't look bad, right? Like this does look just like our Figma design. And when we look at the Figma design, it's maybe slightly off in some places, but it's pretty good. It looks like it's really faithfully captured what was in that Figma design. But it's kind of skin deep, right? It's a good prototype, it's a good illustration of it, but it doesn't hold up to a lot of scrutiny, right? So for instance, since this is the Cloudscape design system, which is by Amazon, there's a bunch of documentation of like how all these components should look. One of the things is the charts. And so I think I can find, yeah, let me find our area chart, right? So our area chart, which is in design, is built to have all this functionality. When I hover, it should show kind of the tooltips. I should be able to click on these things and, change which ones are filtering. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of interactivity to this component. In the version where I'm not connected to the design system, you see none of that's there, right? I'm hovering over, I'm not seeing those things. I'm clicking these bits, it's not filtering. And it kind of makes sense. This doesn't have any knowledge of your design system. It doesn't know your components. And those types of interactions are really, really difficult to express in a Figma design, right? So it looks good, but it's not actually functional. If you handed this to an engineer, they're going to have to understand how to build all that functionality themselves. Now, if we come back, so okay, cool. So this has been finished. We can see what Fusion built. Okay, so now this is the version here that we built with Fusion. Um, and again, it looks pretty similar. It's got some data in there, but let's have a look at now. These things are actually using our components. So all that functionality that's in our design system that we expect to be there is there. The filtering's there, the hovers are there. I could ask it to add some data to this table, which we'll do in a second. So again, it's just like actually your components. It's actually the way an engineer would build this thing. It gives you that real nice look and feel. I think our filters here are even functional. Yeah, pretty cool. Um, but what I want to point out is let's look at this alert banner. And I love this example. I wasn't trying to set this up when I first did it, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working. And then I realized this is actually a feature. This is not a bug. And so just to remind us in the Figma design, the alert banner that we built in the Figma design, it's light yellow. It's got this orange background. The text is kind of orange. It's got these hard edges. When we look at what got built here by Fusion, it's actually a darker yellow. It's got these rounded edges. It looks like it, but it's not exactly the same. And again, this is a feature. And why it's a feature is there actually is a component in our design system here called flashbar. And there's a warning variant that's yellow. And so what Fusion did is it said, well, you've already told me your design system. I understand your design system. And if I were a developer, this is the work that a developer would do. They would look at that Figma design and say, I realize you didn't use a component, but this looks a heck of a lot like the flash bar. So we're going to reuse our components that are already there rather than making something from scratch. And so it did this work that the developer would do. And this is why developers typically really enjoy Fusion as well, because what gets passed to them is the way that they would have written this code. And so we're automatically using this flash bar component. We could look down into the code if we want. We could see, yeah, the flash bar is indeed here. And I want to take this one step further though in the example. If we come to this example, I'm going to switch to design mode now. And again, like maybe as a designer, as I'm doing this, someone says, actually, I don't like that yellow one. Rather, what I'd prefer is red, and I'm a designer, and so I have like a very specific idea of I want it to be that exact red, right? Which is kind of a random red that I've picked. And when I click apply visual changes, this is kind of the next piece of the design system here where, you know, what a developer would do is look at that and say, let's not do the naive thing and just change the background of this component to red. What they're going to do is you're going to look at, you want it to look at this component and realize, oh, there already is a variant of this component that's red. An engineer would say, I understand what you're saying. You want it to be error instead of warning, right? And so when we ask it to make this change in the code, this might take a minute. It's thinking through, and it's going to, come up with that same thing here, the way that an engineer would do it. And we could see, yeah, so it's made that and it's changed it to type error, right? So if we look at the change that it made in the code, instead of going and changing the background or doing like the naive thing, it's just saying, great, I get it, instead of it being warning. let's make it error. And here it is. Um, so this is really, really critical, right? Like we're going to get really faithful design reproductions here of what we're asking for, but it's doing it in a way that your engineers would do it. It's kind of looking out for you. Um, a lot of times though, like the question will come up here is like, okay, that's cool, but like I actually did really want it to be that other way. I realize that we have this component, but I'm really specific here, and to me, it's really important that it be that exact red, or I don't want to use this flash bar component. That's okay. Your designers or your team do have that flexibility, right? You could just ask it like, actually, instead of flash bar, use the alert component instead, right? And why I did that is, again, if we look at our documentation here, there actually is another component in here called alert, which looks a lot like it too. Cloudscape design system is interesting. It has two things that, in my opinion, look exactly the same. But you could just be explicit to it and talk to it and tell it actually I'd rather it be this thing than that thing, and it'll work out and kind of make those changes as well. So yeah, so that's where we are. This was again this use case of converting a Figma design into into code, and you could see it changed it. Now this looks just like in the alert how it looks there. I think our design tokens are a little bit different, so the coloring is a little off, but that's because in our project we've defined our red to be a little bit different, so it's adhering to that. Now, usually the question becomes here is like, hey, this is really cool. Designers, product managers have a lot of ability to plug in data, build these things, but is the code actually, is the code actually something that I can use? And from an engineering perspective, everything that we're building here again is just in a branch. It's like a little sandbox bit here that isn't affecting the actual production code. Once a designer has gotten to the point where they really enjoy this is kind of the pixel perfect view of how I'd like, what they're able to do is click to send a pull request. And because we're plugged into your repositories and your projects, this is the process that your engineers are doing every single day. Is that's how they interact with each other is through these pull requests connected into GitHub or GitLab or whatever your system is. And what happens there is it's going to build out a pull request with nice English language understanding of how to do that. It's got a link for the engineer where they could see what's been built. They can review all of the changes. And if we look a little deeper, we actually have a nice plugin here for them as well. So maybe they disagree with the designer. Let's continue with this example, this alert. Maybe the designer looks at this and they're like, why did they say that? No, actually, hey, BuilderBot, um, don't use alert or flashbar in this example. Just make a new component. Right. So maybe the engineer has a whole other opinion on how this should be done. They're able to easily review this. And because we're tagging in the builder bot here, if we give it a second, I think it will reply back here. I might have to just refresh this page. Yeah, the builder bot says, hey, sounds great. I'll get right to work on that as well. This is the same AI that we use in Fusion. And we can actually check back in and we can see now that the engineer has kicked that off from GitHub, it's making the change and now it's going to go and make a whole new component, right? So there's this integrated flow where your designers, your PMs, you can get pixel perfect, you could do what you'd like. You're still backed up. Your engineers are still going to be able to see what you've done, still be able to do that code review, still be able to look at things before they, actually push that in. This will run for a little while, but I think you get the idea here. There's one last piece that I want to show. And what that piece is the third use case, right? So this third use case here is this backlog use case. This is like, we've got a bunch of stuff. To be honest, I don't need to put everything through this whole rigorous design process. There's a lot of things like in Jira, for instance. I've got my own little fake Jira here. I thought I had a list. But maybe you've got lots of tickets like this, right? Make a new contact us page on our Academy. And it's like, it's not super high priority for us. It's also not a really difficult thing to do. It's just like a contact us page. Every website in the world has one. And so it's not like I don't need a lot of design effort to go into just like making a contact us page. Can't like an AI just do that for us and I could quickly review it. Um, and so in that instance, we are going to look at our Builder Academy here. And in our Builder Academy, I'm just going to paste that in, right? We do have MCP connections with Jira where we could do that as well, but I'm just going to say like, hey, make us a contact us page. We've got this project, make us a page. I don't feel like I should have to be super specific. Everyone knows what a contact us page looks like. And in this mode, this is why this is really useful from a workflow point of view is again, like we have the confidence first that Fusion is going to do this in a way that fits into our project, right? It's going to look at how everything else is built and it's going to follow those patterns and styles. But second is this doesn't have to be an engineer doing this or a designer doing this. It could be that your product manager just does this themselves, right? Hey, quickly build this thing. I'll give it a quick once over, send it to the engineers. Other organizations that we talk to, they're kind of design and product constrained, but they have a lot of engineers. And so what'll happen is they'll actually ask the engineers to do this. And the first people that will do this is an engineer just say, hey, build this thing. And what it does is it enables engineers to quickly build things the way a designer would build it as well. So there's different ways you could do this workflow, but it's basically like, let's really lower the bar for the amount of overhead we have to do to make these types of changes to our projects, right? And it's going through its thought process. You could see it. I'm trying to say a few extra sentences here because I think it's going to happen quickly if I just slow down talking slow enough. Maybe it'll finish, but maybe not. It'll take a second here. But what's nice, right, is like I don't have to do this whole process. Let's just tell it to do the thing, say, hey, build this, and it'll build it. And there it goes, whipping it out quickly. Um, all right, I'm gonna do a trick here. I've already asked it to do this in another tab. So rather than waiting, I'm just gonna flip tabs to the completed version just so we don't have to wait. But um yeah, so here's our contact us page. Hey, that looks pretty good, but actually, this is the 2025. We don't want anybody calling us anymore. So let's delete that. And let's delete that. And maybe I don't care about a subject either. So let's apply those changes as well. So super quickly, you get these things built out. The last bit I want to show here, I'll flip back. I just want to show one more thing. You could do these types of changes, not just creating net new pages like I've been showing. We can also look and say like, hey, I don't have a whole Figma design here, but what I do have is two extra concepts from Figma, maybe this certification and events. And so perhaps what I'd like to do is another quick thing like, hey, I just need to really quickly get a carousel put onto the home page with these two new features there. So let me copy those over. Just waiting for these guys to stop working so I could ask it to do the next thing. Um, but the point solution here is like, again, like everything doesn't have to be these big brand new designs. I'm just gonna stop it if it doesn't go. It can be more smaller changes. All right, whatever, stop. That was good enough, guys. All right, so I can paste those in and say, add these two frames as a carousel on the home page, and we'll let it run. And so again, it's like, I know what I want, just add these things and let's go. Um, and that'll run for a second as well. Um, cool. So those were the big use cases that I wanted to walk through, and we'll let this run. I apologize. I haven't looked at the Q&A. Hopefully our team has been busy answering the questions there. Let me pull up some questions, although I'm not actually seeing it in my Zoom view. Oh, there it is. Um, Looks like I'm seeing all the Q&A questions have been answered, which is great. Feel free to fire some more questions into the Q&A as we're going. We've got about 10 minutes here for more stuff, for more coverage as well. And thanks to Tony and Joe behind the scenes, answered all the questions even before I had to. See if we have any rolling in. If not, I can do, I'll just point out one other use case that we have, which is which usually does get asked a lot, is like a storybook use case, right? It's like, actually, I'm not a designer, or maybe I am a designer, but really I'm owning the design system. And so what if instead of creating new pages and things like that, what if instead I want to actually update the components in my design system? And from that point of view, it's kind of the same process. So here I'm connected to a storybook. This storybook has a bunch of variants in it. This is Material UI again as well. You can see like there's just drop downs. And so in this example, I want to enhance this multiple select here. Um, oh no, I've already got my checkboxes. This is what I was going to build. Let me revert back out of that for 1 second. Oh, sorry. We'll do it here. So this is in Fusion. If I look at my select, okay, we do. I've got, let me just undo my changes. Discard. All right, cool. So I was practicing earlier. So now you can see we're in the state. There is no checkboxes. There's just this multiple select. But if we look in our Figma, I've actually designed, this is our design system documentation for Material UI, and I added a new check marks here. And so what I'd like to do is I want to build this new variant into my existing component so folks can use it. It's the same flow that we've done before. And I hit that export. I'm copying the whole thing, right? It's got the label for it and everything. All that context is really useful for Fusion, and I can just ask it here. Add this in as a variant to the select component. Call it checkboxes, and we'll let it do its thing. So I just want to point that out as well. That's kind of the fourth use case that we see where just directly updating our components and all that good stuff as well. We'll let this run and I'll check out the Q&A, see if we've got any more questions coming in there. And sorry, I'm trying to check the Q&A, but Zoom makes it hard sometimes to find these windows. There it is. What about functionality for mobile app development? Is it only for web app? That's a really good question, Chris. Thank you for asking. So one thing I forgot to point out just altogether is everything that we do build is responsive by design as well. If we look at, some of the other pieces, I apologize. I should have been pointing this out as we went. Let's see. Some of these tabs went to sleep because I went away from them too long. Let me hit refresh here, but everything is responsive by design. So now this is mobile web responsiveness, of course. For mobile apps and native, we do support building at the command line right now. So converting Figma to code into iOS native or Android native is supported. What's not supported right now is this visual preview. That is something that's like top of the list in our roadmap, which should be being released sometime, and I think in a few months, where you'd be able to actually do this like design mode, preview mode as well. So we do support it like at the actual command line to hand off to an engineer to say, engineer, turn this design into code. This visual part for native mobile is coming soon. It's at the top of our list. It's just obviously like a different technology with how you emulate and things like that that we're just finishing up. Um, I see there's a question here. Seems like a good process for a product that has its design system and components in place. How would you recommend to address a use case where a product is built with, for example, material design system, but in a mature stage want to replace it for its own design system? Yeah, that's a great question. And that is something that folks do a lot. I think what I'm showing here is part of that. So, right, like you can turn Fusion onto the design system itself. So here's those checkboxes that we asked it to build. And so it's built it in. We do have people that use Fusion to like actually convert, right? And so you could create a new project and say like, we're trying to build a new design system that's based off of material. And you can basically just tell Fusion that information, right? Like, here's the material components that we used. We'd like to skin them to look in this new way. Can you please build new components modeled off of material? Those types of migrations are possible. You can kind of paste the code in and ask it to edit it as well. Um, and so yeah, that is something that people do, or like gradually over time, what we see is like as you're building new components, you may turn those into your own custom components and still leverage material for, some of the more basic stuff and things like that as well. You can do all that, you just have to tell it, right? And that's kind of one of the things with Fusion or all AI tools is just getting used to just telling it kind of in plain English, like this is what we're trying to do, and it'll help you along the way as well. Um, there's a question at the start. Sorry, I missed the first few minutes. Adding components here. Is this adding to the Builder IO's indexed design system? Um, Good question. Yeah, so we just made a change to this component, right? And we've run that index already as I pointed out before, when we look at our index system in Material UI, there's probably a select list in here somewhere. Let's see. Yeah. So our select list, we just built that. It doesn't have knowledge of what we just built, like this index was run. But your engineering team, when you're updating components, can build in to trigger a re-indexing whenever these components are changed as well. That indexing process takes about 15 minutes usually. And so that's pretty common when you create a new version of your design system, or if you're making kind of like material updates to your components, you just rerun that indexing so it picks up the new changes as well. All right, well, just to recap what we did here, we're running up on time, but I kind of just want to, again, remind us like what we did from the start is we kind of covered, I guess, four use cases at this point. So the first one was this ideation use case of like greenfield, show me new things. I've got, I just want a bunch of ideas out there that you can help me come up with, right? We're going to use that to send out preview links to people. We're going to use that to get feedback. And again, it's always in our design system. The second use case we walked through was this use case of our Figma design, right? So I've got a specific idea. I want it to be built specifically. It kept us honest with using our design system, but if we told it not to, as you could see here, it went ahead and didn't. The third use case was more around like that backlog, right? I've got a bunch of stuff in my backlog. I've got an existing app. I just want to go in there and make changes quickly. I don't want to have this whole rigor. If I could clear out all these things quickly, it'd be really useful. And then the fourth one is actually editing that design system itself. We want to make new components. We want to continually be updating those and improving them with different versions, and we can do that here with Fusion as well. So we've got you covered. Again, I think people get tired of me saying it, right? It's with your design system. It's with the way that your engineers would write this code. It's got the look and feel of how you would actually do it in production. And that's really kind of the key that's going to take this from like a cool prototyping tool that's like really interesting that you can chat with AI to like practical change in like how you work, to kind of change from like this old system with some cool tools to there's a new way of working, and we could be a lot more efficient in how we work with each other when we're using a tool like Fusion that way. So thanks everyone for the time. And we have this recorded. We'll be sending this out as well. And thanks a lot, everyone.